Good morning, everybody, and welcome to CAD Corp's latest webinar, which is called Making Full Use of GIS with Managed Services. While we're anticipating big numbers today, which is great. So while we are just waiting for maybe the last few just to kind of sign in, I'm just going to go through a little bit of housekeeping before we introduce kind of what the webinar is going to be about and what it's going to entail. So before we begin, we will send round the recording of this webinar. So we record it, so don't worry that you have to write notes as quickly as possible in order to maintain all that information that you're going to take away from today. We will send the recording around after the webinar, so bear that in mind. There is a questions panel, so using the GoToWebinar stuff, there is a questions panel where you can write your questions. So feel free to submit them throughout the webinar, but we will go to the questions at the end as well. So if there is anything, then feel free and we'll answer it at the end. And then what we also would like to ask you to do is there's a exit survey which allows us to kind of provide these webinars based on your requirements and kind of your suggestions. So if you wouldn't mind on the when you exit the webinar, just completing that survey, that'd be really appreciated, and it allows us to continue kind of the quality webinars that we produce. Okay, so the presenters today. So my name is Ian Usher, and I'm a business development manager for CAD Corp. I've been working with CAD Corp for 10 years. Started off in a pre-sales role, and I'm now a business development manager, and I predominantly look after our housing associations and land and property organisations across the UK. And I'm pleased to say that I'm also joined by Marina today. So Marina, would you like to say hello and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I am Marina Lazaridou, and I have been working as a technical service engineer at CAD Corp for the past 2.5 years. I specialize in web mapping products, and I have experience in GIS analysis and GIS web app development.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Marina. So what we're going to do, me and Marina are going to turn our cameras off just to improve the bandwidth of the presentation. And then what I'll do is we've got a little Q&A session at the end, so we'll probably turn them on back on then so that we can answer any questions that you've submitted. Okay. Okay. So today's agenda. So I can see that there's lots of people that have registered, which is great, and we've got some new customers and we've got some existing customers. So what I thought was it's just good to give maybe a couple of slides just to talk about who CAD Corp are and kind of what we provide before we get into the what is a GIS managed service. And what we're going to do is we're going to cover what you should consider when you're looking at a GIS managed service, what it could possibly include, what are the long-term benefits, and how CAD Corp design a GIS managed service as well. Before I pass over to Marina, who's going to talk about a number of GIS projects that have benefited from a managed service. And we're anticipating that this webinar will take about 30-40 minutes, depending on questions. So yeah, we'll try and stick to that as much as we can. So the first thing that we like to do is we try to make this as interactive as possible. So the first thing that we like to do is just ask questions from the customers, from the attendees that have attended. So the first question that I've put in the poll is, are you already using a GIS managed service? So we just thought we'd put this out there just to see kind of which customers have already got a managed service and which haven't. You might be looking at what one might entail. You might already have one and wonder what other services you might be able to get out there. It's just really interesting for us to know kind of whether you're already getting one or not. And what I'll do is I'll give it a couple more seconds, and then I will close it off. So that's really useful. So I can see that 55% of you are not using a GIS managed service. So that's great. So that kind of leads nicely into the second question, which is why are you here today? So that it might be that you're here because you feel like you're not getting the most out of your GIS that you currently provided, You might have a special project that's coming up and you haven't got the resources to do it or the time to get involved in that kind of thing. You might just simply be curious about what a GIS managed service offers and what you could be getting. And it might be to see what other GIS managed services are out there and see what kind of tools they have available to you as well. So again, I'm just going to give it a couple of more seconds, and then I'm going to close it off. So again, so that's really interesting. So 70% of you say that you feel like you're not using your GIS to its fullest. So that's really interesting. So I think you've come to the right place in order to understand how to make the most of your GIS, hopefully, using a GIS managed service. So thank you very much for taking the time to answer those questions. So as I said, we're just going to start off with a little bit about CAD Corp. So we've got, like I said, we've got lots of customers on here today, and some are new and some are existing. So I just thought it'd be really good just to kind of remind ourselves who CAD Corp are. So CAD Corp are a UK-based software development company, and what we do is we provide the Spatial Information System, or CAD Corp SIS as it's known as, and that provides web, mobile, and desktop-based GIS applications. And we've been developing these GIS solutions since 1995, so 25 years, just over 25 years. And we deliver these into numerous sectors across the UK. So as I've mentioned, I work in the housing sector. We also have customers in the local and central governments, fire, police, and NHS across emergency services. And then we have a number of customers across insurance and infrastructure as well. But we predominantly focus on software development and providing a managed service to customers who require it. And then just a little bit more on the Spatial Information System. So CAD Corp SIS, as I've said, provides web, mobile, and desktop-based mapping applications. So the desktop is predominantly used for advanced data creation, such as editing and detailed analysis, and it allows users to bring data sets together to read spatial data and perform detailed analysis. But what it is also used for is kind of the tool that allows users to create a project that can prepare for the website. And then the web and mobile provide that interactive and dynamic access to the spatial data throughout the organization. So that can be prepared for many different users, and they can access data appropriately. And it's just worth saying that all these products can either be cloud hosted and managed, or we also provide flexible options where they could be installed locally as well. So we've got CAD Corp have been providing a GIS managed service for a number of years, and what you can see is that there's a lot of infographics on this page, but these are customers who currently invest in a managed service, and some of them are here this morning, which is great. And I suppose one of the interesting side of things is that the majority of these customers are all getting a managed service as part of their cloud services. So they've migrated their web mapping or desktop into a CAD Corp managed and hosted service, and they're getting the managed service from that particular migration. But there's also a number of customers who are currently getting a managed service through individual projects as well, and we'll talk about more about these as we go through the webinar. So firstly, what is a GIS managed service? So I went to Wikipedia and I googled what a managed service is. So what it says is managed services are the practice of outsourcing day-to-day management responsibilities and functions as a strategic method for improving operations and cutting expenses. And this can include outsourcing database, production, support, and lifecycle build or maintenance activities. So I suppose, what does that mean? So GIS provides organizations a chance to provide spatial data throughout the organization and also provide it externally to members of the public. And it's used everywhere without anybody really knowing. Within the GIS community, there was a figure that was banded around of around 80% of data is spatial data or has a spatial element attached to it. So that could be it could be a property, it could be a postcode, It could be a street name, a county, an asset such as a street light, and there's so many more different makes up of the spatial data. So what that effectively means is that users might not realize they're actually using it, but they might rely on it every day. And then a managed service is effectively a service that's designed to handle the daily operation of your applications. Therefore, a GIS managed service provides the equivalent of a GIS manager, but with lots of experience, who knows the products inside out and helps other organizations every day to ensure they're making the most of the systems and technology that your organization is investing in. So from CAD Corp, what you received as a managed service is a dedicated support team with specialists in different areas. For example, analysts, we've got database admins, product specialists who are widely experienced and highly skilled using the products that we provide. So as we mentioned at the start, CAD Corp have got over 25 years of developing GIS, but cumulatively, we've got 67 years of GIS knowledge across sectors such as fire, police, NHS, local government, housing, and land and property. And that's a lot of experience that CAD Corp can provide you with as a GIS managed service. So I'm sure that many of you today can relate with this. So the role of the GIS manager can be multifaceted. So in general, the GIS manager is typically responsible for the day-to-day running of desktop GIS. So listening to customer requirements, making sure that they have the right analytical tools, such as routing toolbars or hotspot wizards, but also ensuring that they've got the correct setup, which might include correct print templates. It could include correct color swatches, or even that they've got the right gazetteer searches, are all equally as important. It can include the day-to-day running of web mapping. So this could include making maps accessible to users or departments, adding new spatial data to existing maps upon user requests, or adding new users to the web mapping system. And when I used to work in GIS, we used to get past a piece of paper that said there's a new user started, please can you add this user to the web mapping? And there'd be a few ticks in that they wanted the local plan access and planning and development map access. So all that used to be a manual task that people still might be doing, and a GIS manager is responsible for doing it. They're always also responsible for the creation and maintenance of the organization's geospatial data. So they might be creating new data such as boundaries for the local plan or neighborhood boundaries within the housing association. But they might also be bringing data together from loads of different sources. There's loads of different open data sources available. And what a GIS manager will be doing is collectively collecting all that data and bringing it into a project so that it can be displayed and disseminated across the organization. They might also be developing new systems or applications, so trying to automate processes so that users get the most out of the system. So this could involve using Python scripts or SQL scripts, but it might also involve building new processes that run automatically to create or amend spatial data being captured. They're also likely to be responsible for staff training on how to use the software efficiently. So again, understanding different user requirements across the organization so that you can tailor the training based on that requirement. And that covers both the desktop and the web. Different users across the desktop might have different tool usage, and therefore the training needs to be more specific. And again, the web, you're going to have different users accessing different maps and different things. So they're going to want to have specific training related to that. And then finally, they might also be responsible for resolving any issues with the system's functionality. So the responsibility of the system sits with the GIS officer traditionally. You might then have to liaise with a GIS provider. So for example, I know a number of GIS managers, and if there's a problem, they have to come to CAD Corp to log our calls with support. But that doesn't just cover one system. It covers the desktop and it covers the web, and we've got server applications. So the GIS manager has to know all of these tools inside out in order to tell support exactly what the current problem is. And that's That's no means a complete list. There's loads of different things that you can add into that, and there's probably some that you can think of today. So if there is anything, feel free to put that in the questions, and we can talk about more about these at the end. So when should you consider a GIS managed service? So through conversations with organisations over the last year, there's a number of reasons an organisation may consider using a GIS managed service. An organisation may have reduced resources, so they may not be fully staffed in providing support for their GIS system for a number of different reasons. Users might have limited knowledge of the systems being provided due to not being advised on or having received appropriate training courses. Users with responsibility for the GIS system may not have been trained in the use of the software, as it might not be their primary job, or they've been passed the management of the GIS after others has left, which we've seen quite commonly. There's also and always possibly a pressure to meet deadlines. So a small team might not be able to respond to the demand from users who require maps or spatial data being accessible from across the organization. So we tend to see this when we roll web mapping out, there's usually a project that it's involved in, but then as soon as users see it, they want access to it. So the team that you have might not be able to meet those that demand and requirements from across the organization. The person responsible for GIS may have just left the organization, and now you find yourself with no time to recruit, or worse still, there's no funds to replace them. We're also being told from customers that it's really difficult to recruit staff with the right skills. So organizations are having to recruit the member of staff and then train them, and then also support them after they've been appointed, which can also take time of the GIS manager. And then we see it every day that staff leave and others are just handed the responsibility of the GIS system. This is on top of the 3 or 4 other jobs that mean they have to split the time between different systems depending on the request from the internal colleagues. And although GIS may be used across an organisation, it might not be considered as a priority. So what can a GIS managed service include? So as we've talked about, it can include tasks from the GIS Manager and or the Analyst. So things that we've just touched on: map and report production, or admin changes such as creating new maps, adding new print templates, connecting to data sets, or analysing spatial data for others to understand. Just a sample of what it might include. It can also include Ordnance survey and spatial data updates. For example, third-party providers of Ordnance survey data may supply you with the data. You might want somebody to take the data and load it into a spatial database so that users can access it, but also ensure the data appears correctly and it's used within the GIS correctly. GIS providers routinely supply software updates, which provides extra functionality that could be used across an organization. So it's really important to keep the desktop and the web mapping software as up to date as it possibly can be. You may want to use a managed service to support a spatial database such as SQL, PostGIS, or Oracle. You may need someone with a knowledge in order to load data, create scripts to automate processes, or simply to update the databases into the latest versions. You may want to integrate our products with third-party systems to seamlessly integrate data. Therefore, you might want to import data from other systems such as MIS for asset management, or Veolia for waste management, or Storm for incident management, or just a number of the applications that we can, or GIS providers can integrate with. For organizations looking at moving the GIS applications onto their own cloud platform, we can provide support for the cloud infrastructure in terms of the design and deployment. And then we can also be asked to provide refresher training to existing users, but also to anybody starting with GIS from scratch. And again, it's not an extensive list, so please ask us and let us know if there's anything that you think we have missed out, and we can talk more about it. So what are the long-term benefits? So lowering the reliance on a dedicated person who might suddenly leave the organization or be unavailable to perform the tasks that the organization requires means that there's improved risk management. There's less chance of things going wrong because you're not relying on a single person. If the system's more reliable and maps are produced instantly and quickly upon request from the users, then it's expected that the overall satisfaction from users will increase as well. CAD Corp have always or will always have staff trained on updated and new releases, so ensuring that we always know or have the knowledge needed for the applications that are being used. So our in-depth knowledge allows us to develop applications or create solutions that meet your exact requirements as well. So we can always create ad hoc solutions to meet your exact data requirements, depending on what you've got. And then all of this ensures the future of the GIS used within the organization. So many organizations identify GIS in their IT strategy and the main benefits that can be obtained, such as increasing access to data for members of the public, or making improved business decisions by analyzing spatial data and increasing accessibility of applications. By meeting deliverables in your IT strategies might mean that there's more reliance on the GIS and the systems being used alongside it. So how do we design a managed service? So what you'll see here in front of you is a little managed service schedule example that we provide. So what we do is CAD Corp work with the customers to understand the full requirements from the end user. So that usually involves a quick call or meeting to discuss those needs. And usually from a CAD Corp point of view, it includes the account manager along with kind of a project manager. And what we do is we talk about all of the options that we currently provide based on what customers have asked for before. And then we'll create this managed service, which will kind of assist us in understanding the kind of requirement and the kind of assistance that you require each year. And just to move on with that, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass over to Marina, who's going to talk about a number of GIS projects that have recently benefited from a managed service. So Marina, I'll pass over to you.
Thank you, Ian. I'm now going to talk about some of the managed services our technical services team provides in more detail and how GIS projects have benefited from these services. Some of them are software updates, database support, data capture projects, GIS Manager or Analyst tasks, and data updates. We provide software upgrades on CAD Corp setups if the users require assistance. The upgrades can either be on user servers, old or new ones, or from on-sites to the cloud, which includes data migration to the cloud with the option to host a database too. On CAD Corp's hosted environment, we tend to keep the software up to date, but of course we can also upgrade our products on customer sites. And that will be for desktop and web products and add-ins. As I mentioned earlier, we can migrate databases to the cloud and ensure that they are maintained and backed up on a weekly basis. We cover any questions related to SQL, PostGIS, and Oracle databases. And I have just included a few examples of support that we have offered. On our web software, we have advised users to set up full text search on their maps, and that's by creating a full text catalog and adding the index on the desired table. We have also advised users on how to speed up address searches by using a GIN index. We have assisted customers to set up databases for AutoCAD. And one more thing is that we've helped fixing SRID issues on data tables. We have recently helped with capture projects, and more specifically, we performed geospatial analysis to export reports for ground maintenance. And we did this by calculating the OS master map land classifications that correspond to land ownership data. This is a process that can be used for tendering purposes and other maintenance projects. Our technical services team performs GIS Manager or Analyst tasks, such as creating maps, which includes adding layers and styling or labeling data, editing print templates for PDF printing with the organization's logo and styling and colors, creating workspaces which are necessary to set up specific web mapping tools or add-ins, converting between different data formats, and modeling data for fire services. For non-PSGA members, we perform frequent updates of OS background mapping data, and this could either be data locally stored on servers or data in databases. Similarly, we upgrade address-based data by using a specific installer which uploads the data straight to the database. And another service we update is the open data, which is something that we have recently started offering. And it allows users to access overlays from various suppliers, such as British Geological Survey, Department for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities, Environment Agency, History England, Natural England, and Ordnance Survey. And the process we use to update the data is that we first download the data, we test it, we validate it, we back up the current data, and then we update it. And then we ask the user to test, which results in a happy user. So I'm just going to hand over to Ian, who is going to present the key takeaways.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Marina. So that's really good. So Marina's just very briefly showed us 5 different examples of where a GIS managed service has helped other organisations, and I can really resonate with that. I talk to customers all the time who are looking at the same kind of things. I know there's a number of customers on here who could who have already been kind of involved with that. So it's really interesting to see kind of how, from a technical support, we can help people. That's really good. Thank you very much for that, Marina. So the key takeaways from today's presentation, so from today's webinar. So CAD Corp have a dedicated and knowledgeable support team who've got over 25 years experience in the software that we provide to our customers and your organisation. As you can see, CAD Corp can effectively become your GIS. So in the short term, we can fulfill a gap, or in the long term, we can provide that. We can become your GIS manager or analyst if you'd like us to. We're just providing a range of tasks as requested by the customer. CAD Corp can help you future-proof your GIS by ensuring it's more reliable, it's up to date, and users are satisfied with the system. Something we've talked about very briefly during this is cloud migration is an ideal opportunity to reduce the amount of work that your GIS officer or manager has to undertake. So CAD Corp remove the infrastructure support or the service release upgrades and support problems, leaving your GIS manager or the staff that are looking after your GIS to do the things that they need to do on a day-to-day basis. And as you can see, there are plenty of services that we can provide. The best thing to do is to get in touch with us so that we can kind of run through that managed service schedule, and we can offer assistance depending on the requirements that you've got. So what I thought would be really good is myself and Marina have put our heads together and just come up with 4 kind of common questions we get asked from customers who are considering a GIS managed service. And then what we'll do is we'll look at questions at the end. So I'm just going to put my camera back on, and if I can ask Marina to do the same thing. What we'll do is, like I say, me and Marina got together and thought of these 4 common questions that are generally asked at the start of having a managed service. So we're just going to answer these questions. So I suppose the first question, which is for Marina. So how do you support new products and service release upgrades?
So we initially create alpha and beta versions of our software, which are being tested by ourselves for months before the actual release. And then we ask a few users to test as well. And after their feedback and after resolving any issues, we then release the products. And we have done something similar for version 9.1 of our software.
Brilliant. That's great. Thank you very much, Marina. So a question that kind of usually gets asked alongside that is, how often do you upgrade your software? So it's worth considering. It's worth considering because if we update it every day, then your GIS manager's got a task that they're going to repeat on a daily basis. Fortunately, we don't do that. But the CAD Corp software's got a roadmap, and usually we have a minor service release which is made available every 6 to 9 months, and then we have a full service release which is every 3 to 4 years. And we also have we do have a monthly release which is aimed at customers who are more active, that concentrate on kind of fault resolutions. But as I touched on when we were talking about the cloud side of things, in a CAD Corp cloud hosted environment, these upgrades are completed on your behalf, on the customer's behalf. So what we tend to do is we upgrade the software accordingly, so that you don't have to get involved in that, for both the desktop and the web mapping, but you're also benefiting from the new functionality that's been added to the new applications as well. And obviously we will liaise with you in order to book that time in and work with you. We won't just switch you over. Obviously you need to understand kind of what the new functionality is, but we will work with you in order to do that. Marina, is a managed service just for cloud applications?
No, it's not limited to the cloud. We can offer managed services on site as well. And we usually do this by arranging remote sessions or remoting onto servers or connecting to databases.
Yeah, brilliant. That's a really good answer. Thank you very much for that. And then one of the last questions is, what does your average customer take in terms of a managed service? So as you can see from the presentation, CAD Corp have got lots of experience in providing a managed service to a range of customers throughout different sectors, but organisations may have different requirements based on what they want to get out of the GIS, what they've been asked for by different users or management. So there's a lot of things to consider. So as a starting point, we always like to get a feel for the tasks required. And the kind of the managed service schedule that we had on one of the presentation slides kind of makes that a lot clearer and a lot more easier for us and the customer to understand. And then what we'll do is we will kind of work out how much managed service time we think is required based on those customer kind of requests. So it's, I suppose really what the answer is that it depends on kind of what the customer wants out of their GIS. Depends on kind of what the average customer time will be taken for us to provide a managed service. So they're the 4 questions that we had in relation that we thought might be just kind of give a bit of an oversight. I'm happy to take any questions. So I'm just looking. Yeah, so there's a really good question from, I can't see who's asked that. It has got a name on it, which is weird. But it says, can you host data on Oracle in a managed service? She's got the user has got concerns about how fussy different database management systems are about badly drawn polygons. So the answer is yes. So it's a really good question. What CAD Corp have got, they've got tools that allow badly drawn polygons to be made better. And then obviously then the data migration is made simpler, because then the correct polygons drawn correctly can be put into a spatial database. So we do have tools that allow you to do that. And I suppose, you know, if you've got a lot of data, then a managed service could help you support with that as well. So that's a really good question. So thank you very much for doing that, for asking that. This one has got a name on it. So Chris has asked, how can I arrange a call to look at the possibilities of a managed service? So that's a really good question. So one of our account managers can get in touch with you to discuss your individual requirements. As I've said, we kind of put together the managed service schedule as we looked at earlier in the presentations. That's going to help us identify your full requirements. And then we can provide assistance to your organization. But I suppose the starting point is that if you I think there's a question at the end that says you'd like to find out more. If you tick the find out more, then one of the CAD Corp account managers can get in touch with you to discuss your requirements further. I've got this looks like there's one more question from Lynn. So it says, do you need someone in the organisation to understand GIS and where it sits to be able to help us? So that's a really good question. So I suppose the answer is we don't need to talk to we don't need to talk to someone who understands GIS in order to help you. We can talk to users who have got maybe a limited understanding of GIS, but I suppose the important thing is we need to understand where the requirement is for the GIS has come from and talk to that individual person. So if it is somebody asking for maps to be created, or maybe admin access to be applied, and web mapping to be disseminated across the organization, then we need to understand what the requirement is from the individual users. But that user doesn't need to understand GIS specifically. They just want to have need to have an understanding of how GIS can probably help them with the challenges that they face as well. It looks like there's one more question from Will. So Will saying, I'm looking at cloud migration existing GIS project of our existing GIS projects. Can you tell me about how CAD Corp can do this? So yeah, again, it's another great question. So we've been helping customers successfully move to the cloud for a number of years, as you can see from the logos on the front page, on one of the starting presentation slides. I suppose one of the biggest benefits of moving to a cloud hosted service is the managed service that you get with it, you receive as part of that migration. And that includes kind of hardware and software being looked after by CAD Corp. It also includes software releases being installed as and when required. And CAD Corp also run and monitor data management tasks and assist with data migration as well. So we can get as involved as you want us to, or we can have as little involvement as you want us to. So what I'll do is I'll probably just contact you, Will, after this meeting, just to discuss the cloud migration meeting that we hold, just to make it easy for you to understand what to consider before looking at migrating your products. But that's really good questions. Thank you very much for doing that. And then there is another question. So Paul is asking, how is the access secured? So different access to different applications. I suppose we need to understand what the particular access is, but we've got a range of access with our products that could include forms authentication, or Active Directory, or Azure Active Directory. So there's lots of different security types that we can enable on web mapping, for example. So it'd be good to just understand that a bit further, understand the question a bit further, just so we can answer it more, hopefully based on the requirements that you've got. Okay, that looks like all of the questions. So what I'll do before I say thank you for attending, I just want to give everybody kind of an update on a number of conferences. So CAD Corp have already hosted a face-to-face and online housing conference earlier this month. Coming up, we've got hosting a local government conference, which will take place on the 20th of October, and that's going to be held at Staffordshire County Council. And we've also got a CAD Corp Emergency Services Conference, which is going to be held on the 3rd of November in Birmingham, where both of these conferences, we're going to be talking more about the products that our customers use, but it also provides another great opportunity to talk about the kind of the managed service side of things as well. I suppose the last thing to say is thank you very much. So thank you to everyone for attending today, to take the time out of your busy schedules to listen to this webinar. Thank you specifically to Marina for sharing how the support team have been involved with a number of managed service projects. And yeah, thank you again for attending today. Please don't forget, there is an exit survey if you've got any last minute questions, or you've got any general follow-up questions or general points that you want to get across to us. But yeah, thank you very much for attending today. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.